Hello and good evening, Force 3 Net Plus students. I just wanted to do up a quick supplemental tutorial video to cover a couple of points that I was trying to make tonight and we were unfortunately unable to see the screen. Well, now we've got an HD recording here and you're going to be able to see things, and hopefully this is going to make much more sense. So one of the first things that I wanted to cover was with respect to MAC addresses. And remember, we talked about on the switch, that layer 2 address, the hardware address, right, the media access control address. When you plug a host into the switch, it'll make an entry, and the command is show MAC address table. So if I type show MAC address table, and I'm on a little 3560 Cisco switch right now, and I hit enter, you can see that there are a number of static entries, right, and go across the column headings here. VLAN is in the left hand side, MAC address is this column here, the type of entry, it's either static or dynamic, and then the ports, right? So these ports for that say CPU, those are all tied to these MAC addresses here, and as you can see, these are going up numerically in hexadecimal order, right? 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then to 10. Okay, so but what we're interested in is, or I should say are, the MAC addresses that are down here, right? So VLAN 9, and on port gig 10, gig 010, we have a number of MAC addresses because this is a link to another switch, right? So we're going to see a number of MAC addresses that are on that switch. On this switch, this physical switch here, gig 07 and gig 08, right? These are dynamic entries because I plug these in. These are actually Cisco 3602i access points, and they have a MAC address, and this is the hardware address, right, for these two APs. So you'll notice that there's nothing on gig 04, and I actually have it staged. I'm going to plug my MacBook Pro into that port right now, and we should see a message of some kind here on the switch, a log message possibly, that tells us that the port is going to come up, and it may take it a couple seconds. In the meantime, you can see port 6, right, is the same thing. So here's a MAC address, it's a dynamic entry, and it's on port gig 06. So this is the table that the switch maintains. It maintains it in memory for these MAC address entries, for the hardware addresses. So let's go ahead and do another show MAC address table, and let's see if anything came up for port 4. And sure enough, we've got a new entry in VLAN 9 for gig 04. And as you can see, as soon as I plugged in my MacBook I should say, it came up with an entry right away, right? So here is the MAC address. This is the hardware address that's burned into the network interface card, the NIC, that's inside of my MacBook Pro, right? And I've just plugged it into port 4. So what's interesting is now I'm going to unplug it from port number 4, and we'll run the command again, show MAC address table, and you'll notice that the entry has been removed immediately. And so if I plug it back in, and I'll run the command again, show MAC address table, you can see that it hasn't populated yet. Usually takes it a couple of seconds to get it in there. It's still not in there, so we're going to continue to, and there it is, right? And so that's how the entry shows up. And now this entry will stay in here as long as there's communications going to and from this hardware address or this MacBook Pro, right? So again, this is a valid format, right? This is a valid format for the MAC address, which is 4 characters a period, 4 characters a period. Sometimes you'll often see with the colons, 2 characters and a colon, 2 characters and a colon. So again, these are all valid formats. Okay, something else that I wanted to show you, and let me go ahead and clear the screen here, is if this is on my Mac, and so if config-a will show me the network interface configuration, and so you can see that I'm using the wireless adapter, right? And I know I'm telling you that because I'm actually using the wireless adapter. It's not a copper cable. So here is the Ethernet MAC address for this interface, right? So this is also a valid format for the MAC address, right? So as opposed to 4 characters in a period and then 4 characters in a period, right? On my Mac, the Mac displays it, as we saw in the book, 2 characters in a colon, 2 characters in a colon, right? So forth and so on again. So 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bytes, right? Each byte is 8 bits for a total of 48 bits. And something that April had mentioned this evening was the 0x, right? Where the 0x comes in front of the hexadecimal representation. So there you have the 0x, right, telling you, hey, what follows is going to be hexadecimal. So it's FF, 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 and then 0, 0. And what we're going to learn is that this translates to 255, 255, 255, 0, which happens to be the net mask for this internet address, right? And so it's a /24, and so we'll get to that in a future chapter. So this is what it can look like on the Mac, right? That's another valid form for the Ethernet, or I'm sorry, for the MAC address. And the MAC address can also take the following form where it's 4 characters in a period. All right, finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about Wireshark. I had mentioned Wireshark this evening, and here's the Wireshark program right here. And so what I'm going to do is from my Mac, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ping this new host, right? So we're going to see if we can ping that new host address. And first thing I'm going to do, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a capture, and I'm going to get rid of what I've got, continue without saving. So you'll notice it's capturing things now, right? And there's a lot of activity going on here. So I'm going to come back over to this window. Let me shrink it a little bit, down to right about there. And I am going to ping 192.168.1.96, and that just happens to be the IP address of the MacBook Pro that we've just plugged in on port number 4. So when I hit enter, you're going to start to see ICMP requests that are coming across, and I'm going to stop this here, and I'll scroll back so you can see. So what I want you to pay attention to, I'll stop that as well, are this line right here. You see the ICMP request, right? It's echo ping request, right? And then you get an echo ping reply. So when we talked about, these entries are similar to the very beginning of the chapter with Bob and Sally, where you have the time, right? So here's the timestamp right here. You've got the source address, which is 192.168.1.69, and that's the address of my iMac, right? And the destination is the MacBook Pro. And ICMP is a protocol that we're going to learn about shortly. It's the Internet Control Message Protocol. And you can see you have an echo ping request, right? And that's a hex number there, 0x followed by F803, right? And that's the ID for the ICMP echo request and echo reply. And then right here, you've got your reply. And so you'll also notice what's interesting is Ethernet 2. So it tells you that it's an Ethernet 2 frame. And so we learned about that this evening. So now you guys already know that the frame type is Ethernet 2. So this is one of the original DICS Ethernet frames. It's not the 802.3 frame. And again, you can see the destination, right? It's coming from this Apple, and this is the MAC address for my Apple, and the source, I'm sorry, the destination is MAC address for my MacBook Pro, and the source is the MAC address for my iMac. And so how can we confirm this? So we've got these 2 MAC addresses here. Well, let me come back over here and let's do a show, MAC address table. In the wrong window there. So I'll do a show MAC address table, and let's see what's in port number 4. And sure enough, the MAC address that's tied into port number 4 ends in D918. So let's come back up here to Wireshark. And there you have it. The reply, which is what we're on here, right? So since we're clicked on the reply, the source of that reply is coming back from, oops, I'm sorry, I clicked off it, I think. There we go. So when we're on the reply, the source of that reply is going to be D918, right? So there's no coincidence that that matches, let's scoot up just a little bit here, with the MAC address that we see in the switch. And again, Wireshark allows you to get very granular in terms of what you're able to see. I mean, we're actually seeing every packet that's going to and from this iMac machine that I'm recording this video on. So again, to get Wireshark, it's completely free. You would go to www.wireshark.org. You can simply click download Wireshark. It automatically recognizes that I've got an iMac, right? If you come in with a Windows machine, chances are it's going to highlight one of these with that green arrow, and then you simply download it and install it. And it's great. It's a great application to run. You can see all kinds of information, especially if you're doing any kind of troubleshooting. So let's see if we see, and so here we go, CAPWAP, right? Control and Access Protocol for the wireless network. Okay, it's doing some discoveries. And so I'm looking for, and I'm pretty sure I saw, yep, here we go, an ARP request, right? So we have a ARP broadcast, and look at this, very similar to what we saw this evening. Who has 192.168.1.96? So .1.96 is my MacBook Pro. My iMac is sending out this broadcast, and this is exactly what we talked about this evening, right? Where the iMac has the IP, and he says, hey, who's got 192.168.1.96? Please tell me. And then look what comes right back, an ARP reply that comes from D9:18. That's the source. And so, again, here's our source right here. What's plugged into port number 4? And it's an ARP request or reply packet. And it says 192.168.96 is at 001 Baker 63 AD D918. And here it is right here, 001 Baker 63 AD D918. And so this is a great example right here of how the ARP process works and what happens at the hardware layer and how the hosts on the same network, how they communicate. It's all about that MAC hardware address at the data link layer at layer 2. And again, you can download Wireshark. It's free. I hope this clarifies a number of the points that we talked about tonight, and that you're able to see what the switch sees, and not only what the switch sees down here, right, in the fact that it keeps the MAC address table, right, the lookup table, but that also with Wireshark you can use these two tools together to do troubleshooting or to simply learn more about your network. And you might be surprised about the amount of communications and who is communicating on your network and what who your hosts are talking to, right? So again, very fortuitous here that we have this ARP right away. Okay, all right, that's all I've got. I hope you guys are enjoying the class, and I will see you all next Monday. Have a great night.